Hey everybody, Grommel's here with some more War Thunder historic battle footage. This time I got some low tier turnfight action in the Heinkel He 112 A-0. It was suggested in the comments some time ago that I take a look at this plane, and I finally got around to doing it. Now, it's no secret that I don't consider the 112 line very good planes. They simply have a weak engine and are too slow. Still, I had a lot of fun in the A-0, and when it can be played to its advantages in a turn fight, it is a very capable fighter. So, let's see what the plane can do. If you take a look at the wings, you can see that the 112A has a very large elliptical wing, somewhat similar to that of the Spitfire, and the wing area is almost the same. The 112 is lighter though, so it has a lower wing loading, making the plane an excellent turner. The 112 also has a thicker wing profile than the Spit, which brings the typical advantages and disadvantages. The thicker profile produces more drag, making the plane slower, but at the same time produces more lift at lower speeds and lowers the stall speed of the plane. This wing makes the 112V and A one of the best monoplane turners in the game, but also in combination with the weak engine, one of the slowest monoplane fighters in the game, and the roll rate is not very good either. The plane has an advantage though that other turners often don't have. The plane and its capabilities are not very well known. Everybody is aware that Spitfires, Zeros and Hayabusas are great turn fighters and will avoid them in a turn fight, unless flying a great turner as well. The 112A is not as well known and does not have a reputation like a Spit or a Zero, and it will face opponents like the Spitfire and Hurricane, which are also good turners. So a lot fewer opponents you meet will try to avoid the turn fight, and the low speed is not such a big problem. In situations that require a boom and zoom approach though, like when facing the extremely agile Jaika, the low speed in straight line and dive becomes a handicap. As armament, the 112A originally had 3 machine guns, but on one plane this armament was replaced by a single 20mm cannon to be used in a ground attack role, and this version we have in game. Now the MG-C30L cannon the 112 uses is a different weapon than the MG-FF and MG-151 on later German planes. It's a variation of the KWK-30 tank autocannon that was fitted on the Panzer II, for example, and it uses a larger cartridge than 20mm aircraft cannons usually use. That gives the cannon a relatively low rate of fire because of the weight of the cartridge, but a high muzzle velocity, so the armor-piercing rounds of this gun should be quite effective versus armor plating, and the high explosive rounds are effective as well. Well then, that's a bit of info on the plane. Let's take a look at a few fights in it. That's a match on the Hardest Day map, and the first target was this Spitfire. Now this is one of my first matches in this plane, and the low closing speed in head-on situations is something I needed to adjust to a bit, as I will show you. Now I noticed that Hurricane a little bit too late, since I was expecting the opponents to be lower than me. So I don't have much time to react, and the Hurricane is competently piloted, and he manages to get a hit on my wing. I go up in a barrel roll, trying to roll in behind him, but he turns into me and we pass each other. He then rolls and pulls into me again, so I start my roll early to face in the right direction when he passes me, and we enter rolling scissors. When barrel rolling around each other like that, I have an advantage, since my plane turns better, and there is not enough roll in this maneuver that the 112's poor roll rate would become an issue. So I get in fire position and a few hits in. He goes in a fast and narrow barrel roll, And here the 112's limited roll rate makes it harder to stay on target, and I threaten to overshoot. So I go up in a wide barrel roll to gain some distance again. He pulls into me, reverses and comes back down while I lost sight of him for a second. But now I can roll out behind him. He is faster than me now though, and I can't catch up to him. One of the disadvantages of the 112. So another 112, a B, gets him in a head-on. Now 2 more hurricanes are coming our direction, and one of them is coming straight for me, apparently looking for a head-on. As usual, I go in an offset head-on, and once he's close enough I pull up and roll over him and then after him. It looks unlikely that I get the necessary lead to fire in the first pass, so I come around in a high yo-yo to get into fire position. I get behind him and he puts the nose up, which seems to cost him a lot of speed, and he has to point the nose back down to regain it a bit. When he comes back down, I get a few hits in and eventually knock out his tail control. Well, there's still the other hurricane behind me, so I loop around for the other one, and here my inexperience with the slow plane gives me a bit of trouble. Since the closing speed is slower than I'm used to from faster, higher tier planes, I misjudge how much time he would have to aim before he passes me. So he gets a hit on my wing. Otherwise the maneuver works as intended and I can get behind him with a barrel roll. But the slower closing speed is something I have to keep in mind and adjust accordingly in the future. Now all the fighters close to us are dealt with, but the rather lengthy dogfight gave the bombers some time to get away from us, so I have to hurry to catch back up to them. Not easy in a plane as slow as the 112. On the way back to the bombers, I encounter another hurricane coming my way with a slight altitude advantage. This time I build up a bit more speed by descending a bit, and he is fast too, so this time he has a lot less time to aim and I pull away from him instead of into him to switch it up a bit, and then again loop down behind him. I get a few hits in, but not enough to finish him off, and I get too close to him, so I have to roll around and reset. All this time the ship AA is firing on me, and it would have probably been the better idea to let the hurricane go and get away from the ships, but I want to finish the hurricane off and I just hope the ship's AAA won't hit me. The hurricane of course also knows that the anti-aircraft fire can help him, so he flies straight over the ships, which are blasting away at me. He goes down eventually, but I take a few hits from the AAA before I get out of range and my plane takes further damage. Now with this additional delay, there are very few 111s left and a large number of enemy fighters still up. Once I finally reach them, there are only 2 bombers left, and the only other friendly fighter is far behind me. Now under other circumstances I would have waited for him and gained some altitude, but with only 2 bombers left and so many fighters swarming around them, the match will end soon. So I either get something done now or never. 2 hurricanes come to meet me, and my first barrel roll is not quite enough to get behind the first hurricane, so I have to do a second one. But my wings are so damaged by now that my stall speed is a lot higher, and I stall before I can finish it. The stall cost me a lot of speed, and there is no point in trying to maneuver at such low speeds. So I put the nose down to get faster and then use the speed to abruptly pull into the hurricanes, loop around and get on the tail of one of them. Thanks to the bad roll of the 112, which is even worse with the damaged plane, I have a hard time rolling around in time when he switches direction, but I manage to get enough lead for a shot which hits the cockpit. In the meantime though, the other hurricane manages to get another hit on my wing, and now the plane can barely maneuver anymore. This fight is over. It was a lot of fun though. And there are a few lessons I took away from this fight. First, head-on avoiding maneuvers need adjusting in slower, low-level planes to work properly. But that is not surprising. Most maneuvers need to be adjusted to the situation, the planes performing them, and so on. In War Thunder there are of course a lot of different matchups, and therefore possibilities. So I often use a bit of a trial and error approach. I wanted to avoid a head-on, but the Hurricane got a hit on my wing anyway. What went wrong? The closing speed was too slow and gave him too much time to aim. I have to account for that the next time. This way you can improve your flying. You have a maneuver in your head and you try it, and when it works, great, but if it doesn't, analyze why and see if you can counter that flaw. And the other lesson: don't fly over fleets of ships with lots of anti-aircraft guns. Well, let's take a look at a few more small fights from other matches in the 112. Here is another quick example for an offset head-on. Having the lessons from last game in mind, I descend a bit to gain some speed, which increases the closing speed and makes this window of opportunity smaller, and then I pull up steep. But this time I pull up almost too steep and I get too slow, and since I did not have the flaps out, I stall. So another thing to keep in mind for next time: don't pull too much in the vertical and add more horizontal, so not to lose too much speed, and better extend the flaps right before the pull to lower the plane's stall speed. Otherwise the maneuver works well enough. I avoid the head-on and I can simply outturn the Hurricane. Now the next few engagements take place on Sicily. We start off with a Hurricane that is attacking a Stuka and I'm on my way to help out. I dive down on the Hurricane, guns blazing, hoping to get him off the Stuka's tail. But even though I get a few hits in, he stays on the Ju-87. I am much faster and I have to barrel roll around to get back into fire position. But next attack is enough and he loses a part of his wing. Now there is an enemy bomber nearby and I initially want to attack him. But I also notice a Spitfire, the last one on the enemy team, in the distance attacking another Ju-87. The bomber is already under attack by a Bf-110, so I fly towards the Spitfire and I hope I can make it there in time. The distance is too long however, and I can't reach the Spitfire before he gets the Stuka, and now I am in a head-on situation again. So I build up some speed again by slightly descending, and since we are a good distance apart, there is enough time to get relatively fast for HE-112 standards. Once he is close enough, I this time put down the flaps and pull up more gentle and with more of an horizontal component. This time the maneuver works exactly as it should, and it appears the Spitfire already has a damaged wing, so getting behind him is not difficult. After a few more turns I get enough lead to fire and I get a few hits in. The Spitfire stalls, either by accident or to throw off my aim, and loses altitude. But he recovers in time to avoid a crash and I have to barrel roll around to get back in fire position. Going down after him, I build up a lot of speed and I close in on him fast, and the fight turns into a low altitude chase. Since chasing an opponent on such low altitude can be dangerous and I get too close to aim properly, I go up in a barrel roll to get some distance before I continue to attack. And when I come back down, the Spitfire is pretty slow and easy to hit. I get a few hits on the already damaged wing, which takes it off. Now, in the next match, also on Sicily, I am just on the way to assist my squad mate with a P-36 when I notice a bowfighter coming up to me. I have to pull up abruptly to get out of his line of fire, but now I can drop back down on him, and the bowfighter is turning. The best opportunity to attack, since the tail gunner can't hit you in this situation. Here the 20mm MG C30 cannon shows its strengths. With its high muzzle velocity, the mixed armor-piercing and high-explosive rounds I have loaded make short work of the bowfighter's fuselage. Meanwhile, my squadmate I was moving towards before the bowfighter interrupted me is now fighting two planes, a P-40 and a P-36, so I turn back towards him and see that I get there. He seems to go for the P-40. We don't have voice comms at this point, so I go for the P-36, so that both enemy fighters have a 112 on their tail to worry about. The Hawk appears to have stalled when trying to get a shot, and that slowed it down considerably. I get a few shots in and then I have to dive below it to avoid a collision. After that I go back up in a barrel roll to get back into fire position. The constant AAA barrage makes aiming a bit difficult, but I get a few more hits in and the Hawk stalls again, and this time he can't recover in time to avoid the ground. My squadmate meanwhile has dealt with the P-40 and it is burning and going down. That leaves one fighter close by, another P-40 attacking a BF-110, and I move towards it, while my squadmate goes back for more ammunition. I sadly arrive seconds too late to save the 110, but the P-40 is very slow from attacking the twin-engine fighter and has no hope to outrun even the slow 112 at this point. The speed difference is big enough that I have to break off my second pass to avoid the collision, and after I am back on his tail again, he curiously does not try to evade my fire. Maybe he hoped he can gain enough speed in a straight line to outrun me, but the P-40 is not known for its good acceleration. Once it is slow, the only way to get back speed fast in it is to dive. Now I have to move back to base as well to resupply, and there the last fighter on the enemy team decides to pay me a visit. But I manage to get back in the air in time and the AAA finishes him off. Well then, that was a bit of Heinkel 112 action, and this is it for this video. I hope it was entertaining, thanks for watching, and maybe I'll see you next time.